Welcome back. In my previous lecture, I talked a little bit about what stories are and how we tell stories. Today, I just want to briefly touch on why stories are so important. So occasionally we'll have these moments where we have an experience and we really need other people to understand that experience because that experience has helped shape us into the person that we are. And it's not enough to simply say, oh, you should have been there. Oh, I wish you had had that experience. No, we need the audience to really feel that so they would get a sense of who we are. That's the empathetic connection that storytelling builds. So it's not just about entertaining. It's about sharing our experiences with others. These experiences can be joyful experiences, like when you're telling someone about the first date you had with your significant other so that they can understand why you click so well, to not so great experiences, some traumatic experiences that you might have had that help someone else understand why you might not feel comfortable in certain situations where other people do. Now, in some instances, it might be that we can craft the story so well, pick the words that are exactly right, that really get the audience to understand what your experience was like, but usually we need a little bit more. We need some performance elements included. Now, you don't have to be like an amazing theatrical performer to do this well. There are plenty of tools out there in your storyteller toolbox that you can use to create that experience for others. Today, I just want to briefly touch on a couple of these tools: gesture and body movement. So gestures typically have three purposes. First, they can serve as a mnemonic device for you as a storyteller. So imagine telling a story about a food fight that broke out in your high school cafeteria. It's one thing to say that someone threw an orange across the room, and I'm sure the audience can imagine that, but you can help them imagine it just a little bit more by saying, and this guy picked up an orange from the table and he chucked it all the way across the lunchroom. And then in our minds, we can imagine that orange flying across the room and what a kind of terrifying thing that might be. As the storyteller, though, it helps you remember what's happening next. So it's that mnemonic device that you might not remember exactly what the words were that you were going to say, but you remember that the next part of the story involves this gesture. Oh yeah, the orange thrown across the dining room. Second, as I've already hinted at, it can serve as a tool to illustrate what's happening for the audience. Like I said, it's more dynamic to watch someone do something, even if they're not like an excellent mime at it, rather than just someone say, and I threw an orange across the dining room. And finally, and related, it can serve as something to alter the pace of the performance a little bit. It's really easy to get stuck in the same basic speech patterns as you're telling a story. When you have an illustrative gesture like that, it can break things up a little bit more, make it more dynamic for the audience. The second element that could really bring your story to life and help the audience understand the experience that you've had and that you want to share is to play with movement and physicality. So not just confined to a single gesture, but thinking about how your whole body can move within playing a character, within illustrating a scene for an audience. So give you an example. We all know the three bears, right? There's Papa Bear, there's Mama Bear, and there's Baby Bear. Now, some people have really good acting chops and they can do different voices for them, and that's great, and we will touch on that eventually. But for now, you don't have to alter your voice too much. Minor changes can go a long way for an audience, but more importantly, physical changes can go a long way for the audience. And this is where we're not trying to get across realism. This is where we're trying to go big or go home, help the audience see what we see, bridge that gap between the imagined thing and the thing that you're telling as a storyteller. So for example, if I was telling the story of the three bears and I wanted to talk about Papa Bear, we get this idea of a big guy, right? So I might stand as Papa Bear, and I would maybe lower my voice a little bit. Papa Bear kind of moves like this, and so he'll move his arms a little bit more than would seem normal. And it looks a little bit ridiculous for me to be walking around, but if I'm saying, oh, and I was Papa Bear, and I'm walking around and saying, it looks like someone's been sleeping in our beds, then I'm playing with the character and my audience knows who's talking in that moment without me having to say that. Now we take Mama Bear, right? Mama Bear is probably viewed as more gentle, right? Remember, in folk tales, we're playing with archetypes, stereotypes, those types of things. And so if I'm playing Mama Bear, I might be more reserved. I might keep my arms close to me, whereas Papa Bear kind of moves around like this. Mama Bear might move around like this, and she might glide from place to place. She might look over here, and she might say, oh my, someone has been eating our food. And notice I lighten the voice just a little bit to give a more feminine feel to the character. All right, and then we have Baby Bear, right? Kids are known to be rambunctious. So if I was doing the story, I might have Baby Bear, someone who moves around very fast. It's like, oh, Mom, look, someone broke my chair. And he would have these sharp movements within his body. And then when I step into one of those characters, like I said, I don't have to announce who they are. I can simply perform as them, and my audience should know, so long as the movements and the gestures are big enough. All right, next week we'll talk a little bit more about characterization, we'll talk about voice, and we'll talk about myths and legends and why those are important stories for a culture. Thanks for watching.